whole story behind this, how this got started, is that we realized in LA how spoiled we are, that every day Mr. Wilson comes in, he says hello, he asks how we're doing, and we get so much from Mr. Wilson being here every day, and we were trying to figure out a way to share that with all other 10 divisions. Your time zones away, your distances away, and there really wasn't a way that we could be able to share, to give you the experience that we get every day. We thought about video, but it's not as personal. So Tim and I and everyone else came up with the idea that we use these video screens. And so this is the first of what will become a once a month event. So we'll pick a day. It'll probably be the last Tuesday or so of the month when Mr. Wilson will come in, and we'll be able to talk with new hires, existing people, and give you the experience that we get every day. The first thought that comes to mind when we were talking about this, I'll share a story with you. I started with the company almost 6 years ago, and I'm in my office and I'm working. I was here about 30 days, and Mr. Wilson walked in, and I stood up and I went to shake his hand, and he said, sit down, we're not that formal. And so we sit down, and he looked at me, and I was here about 30 days, and he asked how the company was treating me. And he looked at me and said, how are we treating you? And I laughed right at him. We were talking about this in his office before we walked in. And I laughed because I couldn't believe that, he was asking that question. Here's the chairman of the company asking how I'm being treated. And he looked at me and he said, I'm serious. I want to know how we're treating you. And right there, I realized this was a very special company where the chairman would take the time to walk in and ask me how the company was treating me. It was unreal. I couldn't believe it. And so that's what we want to do with this session, is give everyone a chance to get to know Mr. Wilson the way we get to know him, and hear him and start to learn more about him and take a lot of the advice that he gives us here in LA. All this is possible, if you look at the video screens, all this is possible because of this video conference that we have. And as the chairman of our company, Mr. Wilson's the one that drove that project. He realized that we could benefit from having that. It's a project he took on, he was very passionate about, and he drove it. And as an end result of him driving that project, here we are, all of us looking at each other, 10 divisions, 6 different states, and we're all here able to communicate at one time. So everyone, here's Mr. Wilson, our chairman, for those of you that haven't had a chance to meet him.
What do you want me to tell him?
I love it. Here he is.
I want to thank everybody for coming. I mean, it's quite an imposition on each one of you, I know, but it's going to be fun for me to be a big shot, so, okay?
It was wonderful. We asked all of you for questions, and many of you came up with some really good questions that we want to get to. And the first one that we have here is, who was one of your role models growing up, Mr. Wilson?
Well, my biggest role model, believe it or not, was my brother, Ernest. And he was a tremendous guy. He was capable, smart, and very, very thoughtful. Thought his things through, very, just the kind of guy you'd want to appreciate, because he had a great appreciation for people. I think he was very inspirational to me. But you're talking about people I've admired in history or something like that. My greatest person probably was Benjamin Franklin, because here was a man who did everything, came up from poverty, ended up being considered one of the great inventors of our time, ended up being a great businessman, you name it, being a diplomat. Without him, we wouldn't have had this country, believe it or not. So I really appreciate this kind of an individual.
I love our history conversations. He'll come in and we'll talk about several things, what's going on in our divisions, or the people that we're hiring, the open positions that I haven't filled fast enough. And then, of course, we'll get into history and other subjects. And so that's always a lot lot of fun and informative. Portland wants to know, what else are you involved in that keeps you busy? Other organizations, companies, community involvement?
Well, I've been involved for many years. I am chairman of 2 other companies. I'm chairman of a little public company in the semiconductor industry. I'm also chairman of a company that is, we make products for the Navy. And we're basically in defense, and that keeps me pretty busy because with the 3 companies. But my majority of my time, of course, is here at Earnest, because this is my love and my company that I really enjoy, and I love growing it. And I think I'm very lucky. I have a son who's sitting back there who really has done great, and these 2 guys here are just doing a great job for us. And I love this company, so this is my most important. I also maintain my law license, and I still have a couple of clients I consult with, or they consult with me.
I think what's impressive is how every morning you go to the other company before you come here. One day we were talking, and for those of you that don't know, Mr. Wilson turned 90. He had his 90th birthday this year. And so one day we were talking, and Mr. Wilson arrives. He gets to Earnest about 9:30, 10 o'clock every morning. So we're talking, and I learned that he has a stop in his morning before he comes here. And if you know LA, it's in the Valley. So he travels to the Valley before coming here, and then comes here. And so I said, wow, here you are, the chairman of a company. You're at this level in life. What time do you leave your door every morning? And he said the time, it's like 7 o'clock sometimes, or when he gets on the road, or when he's out the front door. And I thought, oh my God, there's no excuse to wake up and not leave and be on time if Mr. Wilson is going to one company and then coming here. Houston wants to know, what job positions did you hold throughout your career other than being here at Earnest?
Well, I started, I guess, first job I had, I worked for an accounting firm, and worked there. And the story is very interesting. At that time, minimum wage was 40 cents an hour. And I was hired in because accountants weren't subject to the minimum wage at 35 cents an hour. And I did the job so well that after 3 months, I was raised to the minimum wage. So that was my first job, and I realized accounting just wasn't going to be a future for me. So that was before I got into service. And was there anything else they wanted to know? What other jobs I've had? I've been working accounting, and then I went into service, came out, started Earnest with my brother, and also went to law school. And that, while I was starting, my brother insisted that I keep going to school. And so I graduated as a lawyer, and my brother basically ran this company for some time, and I was on board working with him. But then I developed a law practice and pet partners, and have been fairly successful in that business. And I don't know what. And then I've also been brought in to help a company go public, which I did. And I've done a lot with public offerings and stuff. So I don't know. I could spend a lot of time on my history, but it's just a wonderful history for me. But it could bore you silly.
Let's see. Las Vegas is asking, what are the most pivotal moments in your career that you learned from and got you to where you are today?
Well, the most pivotal moment was surviving. I mean, every business has its ups and downs, and The fact is, I think there are lots of moments in history. The fact is that when my brother really decided that he wanted to retire in his 70s, that made me come back to Ernest Double. I was here all the time, and become chairman. Before that time, I was on the board and as vice president doing that. But and Tim, by that time, my son was the executive VP, and so we took over the company, and I became the chairman. That was a very important change, and that was, I guess in 1990. So, but in the meantime, all the growth of the company, I was always involved very heavily in it. And my brother and I were partners in just about everything. So we worked very closely together, and it was a daily deal. So I don't know what more you could ask.
The next question is a real good one, and it's something that in LA we get quite a bit. We get advice from Mr. Wilson. When I got married, Mr. Wilson came in and he remembered I was getting married, and he said, "Hey, so you're getting married this weekend?" And I was impressed that you had remembered I was getting married. And you said, in life, in marriage, people are going to tell you it's 50-50. And if anyone who's ever been married, when you're engaged, everyone gives you marital advice. And so I had heard 50-50 from everyone that knew I was getting married. And you said, that's wrong. If you think it's 50-50, you're going to keep track. And when it's not 50-50, you're going to have animosity because she's not pulling her end. You said it's going to be 90-10, 70-30. In the end, it's always going to be moving. And to this day, when it's not 50-50, and I start to keep track and think, wait a minute, I'm doing all the work over here, I'll think of those words, I'll let it go, I won't bring it up, and it saves me every time. The question that almost all the divisions are asking is your advice on living a successful and prosperous life.
Luck. Being lucky is the best, so if you can figure out how to do that, that's it.
Love that. What makes you still come to work every day?
My wife kicks me out of the house every morning. No, I love it, so why should I stay home? Yeah, I play bridge, but it's not I play a little golf, but that's not a life. The life is working with people, and when you can help people do things, it's a great joy to see our people expand their lives, make good livings, and I can't tell you, to me, I've always felt very fortunate to be able to be in a position where I could do something for somebody else, because you know what? A lot of people have helped me, and I appreciate it. It's like the GI Bill. If I hadn't had the GI Bill, I would have never had an education. My brother and I came out of service with, I think he had a few $1,000s, I think it was 4 or 5 we started the business with. And he'd saved it while he was in service, and I'd saved a little bit while I was in service, and it was just, that was it. But without the GI Bill, without the help of a lot of friends and cousins and all of these things, it's you don't go in life alone. You need help. And I want to do that help for somebody else because it was always done for me.
What was Ernest like in the early years?
Well, it was a very little business. I mean, we started, as you know, I got out of the service 2 weeks after my brother had started the business, and meets me and he says, "Okay, Chuck, we're in business together. You own half and I own half." I said, "Great." I said, "How many people work for us?" He said, "You and me." And that was the business, how it started. And we used our accountant's office for the office. We had a little car garage of one of his friends. That's where we stored the products. And he had a 37 Packard. That was it. So that when Ernie would sell some stuff, then I would rent a trailer and put it in and deliver it with my car. And if you've ever tried backing into one of these buildings with a trailer and trying to unload corrugated, it's tough. But that's the way we started. We had a little corrugated, we had a little wrapping paper, and that's how we started. And then we realized that the big deal of smart was to get somebody. After we set up a little place, we had a business, and we got a third person, and he would be the driver and delivery man. And then after he would deliver, and I would stay and do all the books and records and and everything in. Then as soon as he would get back, this would give my brother the chance now to work full time. So then I would go out and sell. So now we had 1.5 salesmen instead of 3/4 of a salesman. So we had 3 people. So that's how we started. And within the first year, we did pretty well. So my brother was terrific, smart, really knew what he was doing.
Las Vegas would like to know if you were ever approached to sell, and if you were, why you haven't sold.
Well, we've been approached to sell. We're always approached to sell. Everybody wants to buy us because we've got wonderful people here working all the time. And actually, we're not interested in selling. We're interested in working, and we love this company. And now my son and I see eye to eye on that. It's up to all of us to grow this company and see what happens, that's all.
Reno would like to know why Ernie left when he did.
Well, it wasn't early. He was in his 70s, and it's a very interesting story. We had a very big opportunity at the time to sell at a terrific price. And my brother had it, and he said, well, what do you think? Should we sell? And I said, I think that's a great idea because we got a terrific price out of it. But then I realized if I sold, I'd have a big capital gains tax, and then I'd have to try to help Tim start up another business, and it didn't make sense. So I went to my brother and said, look, Ernie, we got this terrific opportunity. Would you sell me your half of the business for at the same terms and conditions as you can get from this great sell? And of course, that's the only fight we ever had. He said, no, he says, I'm your brother, I've got to give you a deal. And I said no, and we fought about that, and I got my way. We paid him the full price on that. So, and that's why he retired, but he was in his 70s and he wanted to retire at the time.
And then you were off and running.
Well, we were off and running before then. The business had grown, but it was just a single operation. And then when Tim and I got together, and slowly but surely, I think our first opportunity was Salt Lake City. Where are you? Where are you? Salt Lake.
Top right.
There you go, my boys. My hometown. Lucky, wasn't it?
And then Portland would like to know when and why did you decide it was time to expand into other markets?
Well, we had the opportunity in Salt Lake, and that's why we expanded.
Wonderful. That takes us right to our time. I don't want to keep anyone longer than we scheduled. Give everyone a chance to get back. Going forward, we'll have this once a month. We'll send a date out, and it'll be wonderful for everyone to be able to come in and chat with Mr. Wilson. You could email questions in.
So far, none of you have chatted, so hi. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Pretty dull, but what the heck.
Well, it was the interviewer's fault.
That's right. Thank you so much.
We'll see you all very soon.
Do we end it or?
Yes, I think we stop there.
Good
job.
How'd it go?
Goodbye.